Hey, what's up, Street Dogs? Eric from the Eric Street Photography blog. So, just want to share with you some practical thoughts on meaning of life. So, one of my buddies, Jeffrey Lamb, is currently working on what he calls existential health, which is interesting. Is that it's not just biomarkers of lipids, cholesterol, blah blah, but it's more personal. It's more meaningful. It's thinking about our sense of purpose, our sense of meaning in life, and toward what aims we're doing. And generally speaking, people who have more purpose or meaning in life tend to live longer, are happier, and so forth. And the thing I wanted to actually talk to you about today is trying to figure out, what do we really mean to say when we talk about meaning in life? So I was doing some research, and I think for the most part, to live a meaningful life means to live a purposeful life, a life full of intent, where you have some sort of precision or rigor in terms of knowing what your life goals are and pursuing it with your fullest zeal and your fullest energies. And now, this becomes very interesting to me because for the most part, I agree, living a more meaningful life, you're happier, blah, blah. But at the same time, it also is a little bit problematic because what does a meaningful life even mean? And is it possible to live a meaningful life without even knowing you're living a meaningful life? So the first part is, I do think it's possible to live a meaningful life without knowing you're living a meaningful life, in the sense that, let's say I'm being virtuous, I'm creating great art, and after I die, I'm remembered for 1,000 years. These are things that we cannot know at all, but outsiders would probably look at it and say, wow, he lived a meaningful life. But let's say during that whole process, I'm feeling depressed or lost or gloomy or melancholy, whatever. So the question comes, let's say I spend my whole life doing virtuous, great things, and I'm remembered for thousands of years after my death, but the whole time I'm feeling sad and miserable. Then the question comes, is it worth it? I think this is maybe the question, is that, is the goal of life to minimize our feelings of depression, of melancholy, of sadness and dissatisfaction? And I think most modern people would say that is so, but I read something interesting in, I think it was in Nietzsche in his Joyful Wisdom, and where he says, if the goal is to maximize our joy and happiness in life, then we must also, conversely, allow ourselves to fall into the deepest, darkest pits of depression as well. Because often what we try to do, and this is like generally the notion of Stoicism, which I believe in, is in order to feel more courageous and happy in life, it's to minimize our feelings of fear, anxiety, and depression. So you clip the downside. But and this is something I haven't really figured out yet, but by eliminating the downside, are you also eliminating the potential upside? So this is something I haven't really thought about too much or figured out, but it generally seems to make sense, is that thinking about human passion, and when I say passion, I don't really mean to say enthusiasm, I mean to say more like kind of like animalistic, beast-like rage, or sensuality, voluptuousness, blah blah. Passion goes both ways. You could be extremely passionate, like in a positive upwards way, or you could be extremely passionate in like an angry, wrathful way. Think about the deadly sins, blah blah. And so I almost feel that living a purposeful life, it's the notion's very good, but striving too much and discovering what is my purpose in life doesn't seem like a good one, because our purposes in life are always changing, they're always evolving. One of the wisest philosophers of all time I consider Heraclitus. He says, you never step into the same river twice, all this flux, stuff like that. The basic notion is, day by day, moment by moment, we're always changing, we're evolving, we're becoming more, we're becoming less. And the modern notion of trying to find one definitive, platonic, stable definition of things is what most philosophers and scientists kind of strive towards. But this notion, I think, is very misguided. I think it's much better for us to to delight in chaos and randomness and to essentially thrive in it. And I think that's what it means to be a human, and this is what makes a more fun life, is life with more randomness, chance. Like imagine like video games, right? I think video games are an interesting lens to understand human behavior. Video games where you play the same level over and over and you have the same boss and the difficulty never changes, there's no random spawns, no different loot. This would be a very boring game. And in real life, the same thing is that like if you're always eating the same thing, have the same routine, stuff like that, obviously it's going to be very boring. And to me, boredom is probably the worst human mind state that exists. And so our everyday life, but this is the weird thing. In our everyday lives, we're striving to make our lives as predictable, non-chaotic, non-scary as possible. So we invest in our 401k, we book our Google Calendar, we schedule our stuff. But when we're watching TV shows, we're watching movies, or playing video games, we want the maximum amount of randomness, chaos, and unpredictability. So this is hilarious to me. It's totally contradictory. My theory is that it comes about fear. Is that when you're playing video games, and this is why you could become the world's best video game player, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Is that you could be the world's best video game player, but really you kind of don't have anything at stake. You could fail in a video game. It's not really a big deal. You could respawn and stuff like that. And obviously, if you're a top competitive gamer, your livelihood, your sponsorships, blah blah, could depend on it. But still, like there isn't as much risk involved in gaming, whereas quote unquote real life or embodied life there is. And so, and this is why I would still respect more like professional athletes who are playing physical sports, because I think there's actually, to injure and damage your body is actually far worse than rage quitting a game of StarCraft or anything like that. And so I think perhaps a better goal in life, rather than us thinking about living a more meaningful life, perhaps it's living a life that's more courageous, that's more daring, that's more interesting, it's less boring. And we cannot control whether we'll be remembered or not, but we could control how much energy, zeal, and courage you put into our life activities. And this is where philosophy is so interesting, is that the more I study philosophy, the more I think, the more I reflect and meditate, the reality becomes more fun, it becomes more interesting. And I think the ultimate goal of life, I mean, obviously not everyone's goal in life, but like one of my goals in life is to deepen my wisdom, deepen my understanding, to continue to create great arts, and obviously share ideas with others, and hopefully be of assistance to others who are still living or future generations. And I encourage you to do the same. Start your own website, start your own blog, start your own YouTube channel. Just keep it super easy and informal, and realize there's no ultimate conclusions. And it seems like to have a hybrid of both benefiting yourself by sharing your ideas, even like making this video, I hope it has some sort of positive utility for you, but actually it has a lot of positive utility for me, because in speaking, I'm able to flesh out my ideas and thoughts, which empowers me. So empower others, empower yourself, empower future humanity, and you can do no wrong. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace out.